Good evening, and welcome to another World of Warships video with Captain Darkwing Glacier. In this battle, I am trying out the new Tier 3 premium British battleship, HMS Dreadnought. I've been looking forward to this ship being in the game. I was kind of surprised at first that it wasn't one of the first ships put into the game because of its history, but I can understand that because of that they made it a premium ship. HMS Dreadnought is important because it was the first battleship that had all large caliber guns. I mean, it does have some small secondaries, but it is primarily, its main battery is all the same caliber. Battleships previous to this tended to have a primary battery, a secondary battery, and even a tertiary battery that was mainly used to fend off torpedo boats and such. This could cause lots of logistical problems because you would have all the different calibers and you would have to maintain all the guns, and when you were shooting at targets at longer range, it was difficult to spot for both and adjust fire for both the large caliber and the medium caliber guns, because it would be difficult to distinguish between the splashes. So it was revolutionary for its time in that it had all large guns, and this became the standard for all battleships that followed it. And that's why an entire, not a single class, but all battleships after this were then called dreadnoughts, until finally the armor schemes changed and they became fast battleships and so on instead. So I'm excited to take this ship out. I'm looking forward to see how she does, and we'll check it out. The stats, I don't necessarily have final versions of the stats, but it is very similar to HMS Bellerophon, which is the non-premium, the tech tree version of the British Tier 3 battleships. The ships are very similar when you take a quick glance, but there are differences that we'll see. They both have a main battery range of 13.68 kilometers. They have the same kind of turret traverse, which is 60 seconds to go 180 degrees. However, for this battle, I do have Bert Dunkirk as my captain. He's currently a 16-point captain, and I did get expert marksman for him. So that brings the turret rotation down to 45 seconds. If I just had expert marksman for a standard captain, then that would bring it down to about 48 seconds. In comparison to other ships, the South Carolina is 45 seconds, so the now turret traverse is the same as the South Carolina. The Queen Elizabeth, for example, is 72 seconds, and the Warspite is 54.55. So the turret traverse feels good on this ship. It doesn't feel sluggish at all to me when I was playing it. Another thing to notice is the top speed is 19 knots, which is 1.3 knots slower than the top speed of the Bellerophon, but I do have the speed flag, the Sierra Mike flag, on this ship, which makes it feel much faster. Well, not much faster, but it does not feel quite so sluggish as you might expect. I seem to be keeping up with everyone else in this battle, and I did not feel like I was lagging behind. I was not a Colorado in a battle with lots of North Carolinas, for example. Another thing I noticed right away, it was the first thing I tested when I got into the ship, is the rudder shift. Now, HMS Bellerophon has a rudder shift of 16.3 seconds, which is typical and makes the ship feel like it's moving around like a beached whale. The Dreadnought, however, has a rudder shift of 11.6, which is much better. I felt like, not quite a cruiser, but I felt like I was maneuvering very well, and I was looking forward to trying to test out the torpedo beats on this thing to see if I could evade torpedoes well. Another thing is the turning radius for the Bellerophon is 560 meters, whereas the Dreadnought is better by 40 meters, so it's only 520. So here comes my first attempt at dodging incoming torpedoes. Fortunately, the torpedoes are spread out, so I have plenty of room to maneuver, and this is not an issue whatsoever, but it felt very comfortable turning into them, and I wasn't worried at all that I was going to hit anything. And here comes my second opportunity. This one is coming directly at me. I don't have the advantage of Allied fighters or anything protecting me, and it looks like I may take one torpedo, so I hit the brakes, I go full right rudder, and I'm able to avoid it. Which is extremely important for a ship like this, because it has zero anti-aircraft artillery. The Bellerophon has a single 76.2 millimeter gun, so that's not much better, but this ship doesn't have any at all. So that's something you definitely have to be aware of. You're not going to shoot down any planes at all, so you're going to need that extra maneuverability to avoid incoming torpedoes. Fortunately, it does have a small turning radius, it does have a great rudder shift, so as long as you're alert and watching for those fighters to come in, you should have plenty of time to avoid taking any torpedoes. Another thing is that its detection is relatively low. The Bellerophon's detection is 13.68 kilometers, which is the same as its main gun range, whereas the Dreadnought's is only 10.26. Actually, I think that's... I do have concealment on my captain, so that's cheating a little bit, but there I get my first kill. And one of the things I noticed about the guns is that they feel accurate. The Sigma value is the same as the Bellerophon's at 1.8, but for some reason it felt better than that. Maybe it was just RNG shining down upon me for this battle, but it did feel superior to what I was used to for battleships at this tier. So here I am trying to line up another shot, and this is kind of a wide spread of dispersion, and you're going to see some dispersion that are very tight, which was impressive to me later on in the battle. So here I am turning around hard, and it's kind of at this point where I realize that the enemy has a bunch of ships on the eastern side and are heading towards our cap. So I decide I need to turn around and start heading back in that direction, because if I start pushing too far forward, you know, we have multiple enemy ships there. They have the Miyogi, the Wyoming, the Tenryu, there's the destroyer there, and the Hosho all guarding this. So plowing into them, I think, is a mistake. So I'm going to go back and assist my teammates helping the base and try to fend off the enemy Dreadnought, Kaiser, Wyoming, and they have our Karlsruhe there as well. Now the V-170 is trying to make a move on our Clemson and launches some torpedoes. Here I take one of my first hits. And I think the Clemson is not going to do so well against this V-170. He launches torpedoes back at him.
Torpedoes to starboard. Torpedoes to starboard.
So far he's doing okay. Alright, so at this point I'm starting to look at the Kaiser as my primary target, since he is the largest ship within range. And also with the Wyoming, but he's way too far away. Also, while I'm waiting, I'm trying to look at the V-170. There he is. He's starting to accelerate, so I take a shot at him, but it looks like I gave him a little bit too much lead, and so I miss. Now, by this point in the battle, I'm starting to get a better feel for the ship. And honestly, it feels like it's a Tier 3 Warspite. Its maneuverability, well, I wouldn't say the strength of its guns, but that's just the impression I got. I've been driving the Warspite around a lot, and it feels like it's the same type of ship. So if you wanted me to compare it to any other ship in game, that's what I would do. Now, it looks like I'm closing in on the Kaiser here, waiting patiently for him to come out from behind this island, and I can finish him. The score right now, we are down one ship. We've lost 5 to their 4. And our Wyoming is just kind of sitting there, and he's in trouble. I fire my broadside, and look at that dispersion. It's nice, tight grouping. I do a lot of damage to him, but I don't quite kill him. At this range, the penetration isn't quite so good, and I get a couple bounces as well. But it was a good, solid hit, and the dispersion was not high at all, and that was a nice salvo. Of course, I've only done 18,000 points of damage by this point, but that's going to go up by the end of the battle. Here's a Karlsruhe. He is over 10 kilometers away. 11.4 actually, so he is going to be a difficult shot to hit. The tightness of this grouping is pretty good, and only 2 overpens, so not as good as I hoped. In the meantime, our Wyoming is in the near side of the cap, preventing them from capping, and I need to get in there and help him as best I can. To the south, we just have our Miyogi, Bogatir, and Clemson against the rest of the enemy fleet, and hopefully they can at least hold them off. And I'm taking a look around, and that looked like another good shot on the Karlsruhe. There we go, I get a Citadel. 8,900 damage, plus with the overpen as well. Here's the Kaiser. As soon as these guns reload, I will be able to finish him, I hope. Or maybe I'll take another shot against the Karlsruhe. Our Wyoming, in the meantime, is dead. So I need to get in the cap and stop them as much as possible, and hopefully get some help from my teammates. Just one shatter, but the next one is good. I get 3 penetrating hits, and I finish off the Kaiser, which slows down the cap at the very least. It's at this point where I realized for the first time that I just fired off the starboard broadside with all 4 guns, and my left turret, or left beam turret, was or port side beam turret, was just sitting there not being used, but I did have an enemy target off my left-hand side. So I was able to take a shot at the Karlsruhe. I don't think I did any damage, but that's something to remember. And on ships like the Kaiser, which have similar layouts of turrets, you often forget that you can fire both sides as long as you're paying attention, and you can swap between each side of the ship, and you may not be able to, wipe out the ship on the weak side where you're firing, but you can at least keep them honest, and just keep them at bay and realize that you're still a threat from that side. So it may not be wise for them to charge you and get some torpedoes off, for example. So here I'm trying to angle so I can evade damage from the enemy Wyoming and Dreadnought, while at the same time fire my turrets and try to finish off this Karlsruhe. There we go, I get 2 more overpens, and I really should finish this guy off soon. My rear turrets open up, and that's the kill. That gives me kill number 3. The enemy Dreadnought is now behind the island, so it's just me and the Wyoming. Unfortunately, he's at full health, but he's just sitting there, so he's a sitting duck for my guns. Waiting for them to reload, I decided I'm going to go after him because the Dreadnought is probably going to come out from the south side of the island and threaten me from there. So the longer I can keep him out of the picture, the more time I can spend on whittling down this Wyoming and, if I'm lucky, kill him. And show me all that broadside and just sitting there, and he's actually turning his guns away from me, which is kind of strange. I can do some damage to him. My first shot is kind of disappointing. I'm waiting for my rear turrets to turn around, and they're turning around, relatively quickly, so I'm not too upset. With that, my front turrets are about reloaded. My, there we go, starboard beam is ready to go. And now I see what the Wyoming's doing. He's turning around so he can aim his guns from the port side and take me out from there. So I do another 6,000 damage to him. I kick off my repair, and unfortunately the enemy Dreadnought has now come out from the other side of the island, so I wasn't able to do nearly as much damage as I wanted to, and I am taking a lot of damage. However, I can use my port turret again to shoot at the Dreadnought while my guns on the other side are reloading. So I just do a single overpen to him, but I do get a defended ribbon, and firing at the Wyoming now, I get some more good penetrating hits. And I'm probably doomed at this point. It's just me and a destroyer left. Yep, now it's just me. And I'm not long for this world, I don't think, but I'm putting up a pretty decent fight, firing from both sides of the ship against 2 enemies, of each of which have more health than me. And I'm giving as good as I'm getting. But just before I get that last shot off, I get taken out by the enemy Wyoming. I do get first place on my team. 74k damage isn't bad. Now, would I recommend this ship? If you like the Warspite and you like playing low tiers, I would definitely recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Just watch out for enemy carriers and make sure you're dodging. So thank you for watching.